Okay, hi, this is Kendra Prevost, KP Real Estate Group by BlackDFW.com and NationsNotary.com. And I'm here today with Councilman Shemwell. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
That's correct. Hello, how are you?
Are you good? How you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
I want to first express my gratitude that you took time to talk to me today. I know I reached out to you via Facebook when I saw that night when I saw about the petition for the McKinney City Council to have you actually removed or voluntarily give up your seat in the City Council in the city of McKinney.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I just felt like I thought the story was over with, and I just felt like I wanted to give you a platform to really let people know what's going on, what you've been going through, being the only Black member of the City Council since you've been in office. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So please tell me, tell me about yourself. Like, what's your background? Are you from Dallas? How did you get into politics what do you do? How did you become a member of the city council? Where did this come from? Where did this dream come from?
Yes, ma'am. First, I want to thank you for taking the time to reach out to me and actually being engaged and involved in the process. That's half the battle. So, no, I'm not from Dallas originally. Born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I came out here about 15 years ago at about the age of 18 years old. And I've always been outspoken and kind of boisterous. That's how my mother raised me up to be opinionated and to stand my ground. And I can remember back now, as you live in life, you never know how your path is going to come out. But I can remember back at a young age, I got in trouble in school. A white friend of mine brought a fingernail filer to school, and I was filing my nails, and we got called to the office. Now he brought it to school. He was suspended for 5 days. I had it. They expelled me. And so I remember my mom at a very young age having to go to a school board meeting and fight for my right to an education and to have this expulsion removed and for me to go back and be able to participate in school. And so I learned, looking back now, I learned that that's when I became very outspoken and opinionated about what is right and standing up for myself and kind of learn how to stand up for other people. Fast forward, I come to McKinney, Texas at 18, 19 years old, and it's a culture shock. I'm from inner city, urban Los Angeles, and I come to this rural kind of town in McKinney, and it was a culture shock. And then we fast forward to I became a barber, and that's what I do in my everyday life.
Hmm.
I'm a barber by trade. And so every client, as you know, when you go to see your stylist, every client has some story or something they want to talk about. And I started to learn more about the city of McKinney and different things. And I heard that the water quality on the poorer side of town was not up to par. And I didn't know anything about local government, but I thought that this couldn't be right, and these people couldn't be telling the truth about the water. So I started researching. I wanted to know who controlled the water, and that's when I found that the city of McKinney controlled the water and that this local government agency had some control. And so I went to my first city council meeting around 2014 through 2015, and it really piqued my interest. So then you fast forward to 2015, I get a text message about a little girl who's being slammed by a white officer in McKinney at a pool party, and it really just struck something in my heart. And I couldn't finish my haircut, so I did my best. I finished the haircut, and I said, you know what, I gotta go talk to this police chief. And so I started organizing, and we organized some of the protests and rally around the McKinney pool party. And at that point, they kind of challenged me. It was they said, well, being an activist or organizing protests doesn't make change. If you want to make real change in this city, you get elected and become a council member. It was almost like a challenge, right? They don't expect you to be able to do that. And so I accepted that challenge. I said, if we don't have people that have our best interests, if our cries keep falling on deaf ears, then we will find somebody to replace these council members. And I've also been the type of leader that wants to show by example. So I can't tell the community, let's find people to run for these seats if I'm not willing to do it myself. And so I did. In 2017, I ran. to be a city council member, and I was elected. So thank God, right? And so that's kind of how I got into my long answer, kind of how I got into city council. I never thought about it. It was never an aspiration of mine, but the community needed a voice, and I wanted to be that.
This is a great conversation to have because, a lot of people, they always tell us we need to be engaged. We need to be involved in the political process, but some of us don't even know where to start. So how old were you when you were elected?
I was 30 years old. I think I'm the youngest council member ever elected to the city of McKinney.
And are you the first Black, or have there been other Blacks elected?
I'm the second African American ever.
Okay, second African. Okay, so this is interesting to me because I want to know, okay, so you a barber, you self-employed. How much money do you need? Like, how did you gain support to actually win? Because McKinney is not, from what I see, is not so diverse. At least that's not my perception of it. I lived in Garland for 15 years, and now I live in Saxe.
Yes,
so I don't know much about the diversity in McKinney, but how did you get your campaign started? How did you get the funds? How did you get support?
So I remember, 2016, the end of 2016. It's almost time, for the deadline to sign up for city council. And I remember saying, nobody's going to remember that I said 2 years ago that I was going to run for council, right?
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of activists, a bunch of young people in the streets protesting and stuff. Nobody's going to remember, that I said that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, just grappling with myself, and my conscience said, nobody else might not remember, but you remember what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I had to be a person of integrity and do what I had to do. And so I signed up. I didn't know anything about the process really altogether. I didn't even know when I said it if I qualified to actually run as a council member.
Right.
But I signed up, and I was just excited. I called my mom. I said, "Hey, Mom, I signed up to run for city council." Yeah, and it was like, okay, cool. And so I remember seeing other council people or other people who were running, other candidates running. And I remember, here I am waiting for the day to sign up, and I signed up. But all these people who were running these other races, when they signed up, they wrote out their campaign. When they signed up, they already had websites and literature and all kinds of things. So I spent the first couple months watching other candidates like, okay, he has business cards. Maybe I'll get some business cards. Okay, he has signs. Maybe I need some signs. And so that's kind of, I didn't know anything about it, but I put.
Did you fund your campaign? Are you saying you funded your own campaign initially?
I did for the most part, right? And so I funded everything. I might have been like, I had like $1,200 in my first 5 months. $700 was mine, and I think, what gave me the edge was that I was always engaged and involved in the community. I was always feeding the homeless or mentoring kids or helping the elderly, so it wasn't a stretch, for when I ran for people to say, okay, I know this guy. And so I wasn't just a stranger coming in saying, hey, vote for me, but people actually knew me in the community. And so that gave me a really good push. However, people didn't think I was a viable candidate. I remember, having meetings with different groups, and they're saying, well, he doesn't fit the bill. We want a white guy, middle-aged. And, I just didn't fit that. I had locks at the time.
Did they ever actually say that to you?
Yes. I mean, these are things that were said in meetings or, while I was present, well, you guys are going to support this guy, but going forward, he doesn't really fit the bill. So a lot of people doubted me. And then I went through the first 5 months, and we were in a three-way race, and I made the runoff. And a lot of people don't know what a runoff is. And basically in Texas, you can have the popular vote, or you can have more people vote for you. But if you don't have 50% of the total amount of people who actually voted, then you go into like a tiebreaker. Mm-hmm. And so that's what a runoff is. It's almost like a tiebreaker. So we were in a three-way race, and nobody got 50% of the vote. And so the top two candidates go into a additional 6 weeks of running for the tiebreaker spot. And so I made it into the runoff. And so I raised about $1,200 in the first 5 months. But when I made it into the runoff for the next 6 weeks, people at that point started believing in me, and they knew that I was a serious candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the next 6 weeks, I raised about $6,000, and
Wow.
donations started flooding in. So it didn't take much to win. It just took a lot of hard work. It took me a lot of work. I learned a lot of hard lessons about it, and God willing, I was victorious. So.
Now, as a council person, do you run like, is it like Democrat, Republican? Do they do that in a councilman race or?
So not in our city, and I don't know if it's across Texas, but we're a nonpartisan race.
Okay.
Much as it's supposed to be, separate, you still have your parties behind who are supporting candidates, even though you don't have to announce.
Okay. Now, as far as the time that you took away, you took personal time out your life to run for this, like on a fly. You know what I'm saying? So I want to thank you for your sacrifice, because really most people don't want to get engaged like that. They take a lot of time out. Like you said, you probably were trying to juggle, trying to earn your own income, and then you're trying to all of a sudden run for city council. So you got elected in 2017. So I will never forget your speech. Now, I don't know if that was the first meeting you made this speech, where you talked about the state of emergency. Well, what had happened when you first got elected? How were you received by the other members?
Well, before I got elected, I had a very hard and contentious campaign. Like I said, I grew up in Los Angeles, inner city youth. My dad got killed when I was 12, and I was dealing with homelessness, growing up, and just a lot of things. I didn't have the male role model to teach me and help guide me. So I made a bunch of mistakes in my life, and I had a past, a criminal history.
Mm-hmm.
And so, during my campaign, there was a lot of negativity about, just me having criminal history and whatnot. So there's a lot of people who didn't want to see me get elected. They were talking about recalling, or basically making my election null and void if I had won before I ever even got elected. So there was just a lot of negativity that I had to get through. But at the end of the day, I won. And so, all the naysayers at that point, have to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that they weren't conspiring and working behind the scenes to try to remove me, but the job was fine, and I continued to do the work as a council member, and I started to hold people accountable as a council member. And in 2018, a year after my election, a year after being in office, I got pulled over by an officer in McKinney
Mm-hmm.
for allegedly speeding. And so I knew this officer knew who I was, and that he was just trying to show me that he was still the boss. Even though technically I was his boss, I was still just a black man that he could pull over. And so he ended up arresting me because I refused to sign his ticket, and that kind of went viral. McKinney council member gets arrested, and so at that point, it pissed a lot of the white folks off here in McKinney. Anytime you stand up or speak out against racism or police, especially in rural Texas, in a conservative McKinney, it's an issue. And so I told them that I was racially profiled, and that's how I felt, and that's what it is. And a lot of people in my community feel that way. And that was just, they couldn't take that, and so they started to try to change these rules and these laws and these ordinances to remove me. And so they started that process in 2018. So we fast forward to 2019. At the end of 2018, the police again in McKinney they arrested me for a domestic violence charge, and a continual domestic violence, when in fact I had never had a domestic violence charge. And so they tried to enhance this bogus charge into
Okay, let me see something. So you saying, okay, so you can get arrested for not signing a traffic ticket?
Right. Found that out the hard way. So got arrested for not signing the traffic ticket.
Okay.
So you can.
Okay.
So basically, they explained to me that the ticket is like a promise to appear to court.
Okay.
And so if you don't sign the promise to appear to court, then they have to take you to see the judge. So they have to take you to jail because you refuse to promise to appear in court.
Okay.
So I learned that the hard way, and that's okay. But then we fast forward again a few months later, like I said, They charged me again. Now all this is happening in my own city, and so they charged me with this domestic violence charge, saying that I had continual domestic violence, and that wasn't the case. But it was important to know that they tried to enhance it into a felony. Understand why? If they're able to enhance this to a felony, then I'm no longer eligible to be a council member. So when you look at all of these tactics to try to remove me from office.
So let me ask you this. So was it, I mean, how did they come to your house? Did somebody call the police for this arrest? I don't understand. Are they stalking you?
Right, I don't know the ins and outs of what of everything, but long story short, the mother of my children had a car that belonged to me. I went to go retrieve the car, and she didn't want to give me the car, and so she was trying to take the keys from me, the car keys, and she broke a nail. And because she broke a nail, and most women know that if your nails aren't taken care of, if you need a feel, then you can break a nail easily, right? Snag something. So she broke a nail, and they tried to charge me with a felony because she broke a nail. And so I knew it wasn't going to stand. So I just thought it was, it was interesting the levels that they would stoop to try to, to remove me from office and to try to humiliate and embarrass me. I think half of the battle is if they can throw all this mud on you, it doesn't matter what sticks or what doesn't. If people don't know the true story, if they don't know what's going on, then they assume the worst. And so I think that they think that by continuously putting negative things on me, that that's somehow going to hinder my ability to grow as an elected official. And so ultimately those charges were thrown out and dropped and not taken up by the grand jury, but you won't hear any of that on the news.
Okay.
They didn't blast that on the news for months like they did when they threw these bogus charges at me. Anyways, we fast forward to all of that because I know I'm taking up a lot of your time. Tatiana Jefferson, right? Well, Botham John gets killed in his home. And so we go down and we're still protesting in Dallas. We had to get a district attorney removed in Dallas because she refused to take a hard stance on a murder charge. So we continue to do our community organizing and work. And we get a murder charge for Amber Geiger. And then she goes to trial. She gets the bogus 10 years. And then, the witness to her case is killed. And then within a week, Tatiana Jefferson is killed in her home. And it just seemed like everywhere I turned, Black people were dying in Texas at the hands of law enforcement. And it seemed clear to me that we needed our lawmakers to change the rules to protect its Black citizens. And so I called the mayor. I got with my group, and I called the mayor that morning, and I said, I'm gonna read this proclamation of a Black state of emergency. And I read it to him. I sent him an email. I called all the Black pastors in my community that I knew and told them, show up tonight. This God had put something on my heart. And so I issued this proclamation that basically laid out the facts of what we feel in the community, the sentiments of the community. And then it had 6 recommendations or proposals for laws that we can enact, for things that we can change to be proactive and protect Black citizens. And again, white McKinney,
You already know.
really upset and frustrated about it. And then also the mayor had an opportunity. Like I said, he heard it. I emailed it to him. I sent it to him. I asked him to edit it. If, look it over, edit it, send them my way, any edits to make it more palatable, because I think it would make a stronger stand if we stood together. If we were unified and we stood, I think the message would go further. And he didn't send any edits back. I think he took this opportunity to let me hang myself. He thought that this would be the dagger that does it. And he was right. He caused a lot of uproar, but at the end of the day, I did what I felt was right, what God had put on my heart. And so whatever comes of it, comes of it. And so here we are.
So what month was that in last year?
October.
Okay, so I'm assuming y'all had a city council meeting in November. Did y'all have any council meetings since then?
Yes, ma'am. We have a council meeting every first and third Tuesday of every month.
Okay, and you've been coming to the meeting?
Yeah, I don't miss council meetings.
Okay, so how is the treatment you're receiving from your fellow council members?
Well, it's I receive a lot of disrespect and demeaning and belittling, and I have to check it often.
Mm-hmm.
And I said at the last meeting that I had to tell the mayor that he was being disrespectful, and I didn't appreciate it. But what I realize is, as Black people, we are demeaned and belittled on a daily basis, and we kind of charge it up as just being Black in America. And these instances, these occurrences, start to seem insignificant. It just seems like everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that I stopped really taking good notes of all the times I was belittled or demeaned,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not okay to do that. And being treated disrespectfully or belittled is never okay, and we as Black folks should never have to take it. And so I stormed out of one of the last meetings because I was feeling disrespected. But like I told him, I said it's not that I can't take it anymore. It's that I should not have to take it in the first place. So I can sit and take it. I'm used to it. I'm numb to it, but I shouldn't have to. And so it's time for me to take a stance. But I do pretty well in my meetings. I think anybody that attends those meetings know that I'm really engaged. I know my stuff, and I do my best.
Now, what do you think? Okay, so I totally support. We need diversity in all areas because, even if it's only you at least got one voice with a different perspective, different from probably everybody else on the city council.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's important for you to be on the council. It's important for your voice to be heard because otherwise we'll just continue in the same old, same old. That's the problem with this country now. The same people keep getting elected. The same people in power. None of the people have our best interests, and that's really Black, white, whatever. You
Yes,
know what I'm
ma'am.
saying? It doesn't even matter to me if a Black person elected, because I've seen them do the same thing,
Yes,
get in
ma'am.
office and not make any change. So, okay, so my thing is, tell me some core issues that you have. I know they're coming up. They're trying to. They put together some signatures for a petition to
Yes,
remove you from office.
yes, ma'am.
And I believe in what month do you have a they do another election?
So my term is up in 2021, in May
Okay.
of 2021. What they're trying to do is in May, they're trying to have a recall election that would take my seat, would take the remaining year away from me
Mm-hmm.
in my seat, um, which I believe people have the right to recall elected officials. Let me just say that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was elected by a district. And so what the problem we see with what they're doing is, one, they changed the rule to make it easier to remove me because they couldn't do it. And so in 2018 they changed the rules to try to make it easier. And they expanded the powers um, to clarify that people in the whole city, people in the entire city can outvote me. Now
Oh my God.
I'm voted in by a majority minority district. So what we got to understand is that what Dr. King fought and died for, the Voter Rights Act of 1965, gave these protections for voting for Black folks. One of those protections came in 1977, which said that they created these majority minority districts, knowing that historically Black people have been discriminated against in housing. And so Black people lived in certain pockets of the community. And by breaking up the districts, it gave Black people in their district the opportunity, a better and more fair opportunity for representation. So that's why I didn't run for a whole city election, but I ran for my district. But now they're using the three other districts that are not my district to remove me. And so we believe that's unconstitutional. And so we filed a federal lawsuit in federal court, and
Okay.
we're going to court. But I think people really need to pay attention to this because this will set federal precedent across the whole country. It's not just a McKinney issue. If they're allowed to remove me with the votes of all the other districts that are not mine, then they'll do it to the next person. And they'll use this precedent to do it to anybody that stands or believes something that they don't believe. And so it's an ultimate power grab, but it affects more than just me. And so I tell people, take me out of it. This is not about me. This is about any elected official that you actually want doing the work for you. And you wonder why you have senators right now who refuse to speak out against this person. You wonder why you have these elected officials, because of intimidation and retaliation tactics like this. If you dare to speak up about an issue that we don't want to talk about, then we'll use all of our power in all of these other districts and remove you. So they've effectively diluted the vote of my district. It doesn't matter that my district wants me. If all 50,000 people in my district support me and love me, they could not outvote the 150,000 people in the 3 other districts in McKinney.
You know, I don't, this happens. I have said this so much. What they do is, because people of position and power have the power, if they don't like what you're doing, all they do is change the rules.
Yes, ma'am.
They don't play fair.
No.
So you might be playing by the rules. All we can do is play by the rules because we don't make the rules.
Yes, ma'am.
But the majority can make the rules.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
if they don't like what's going on, the situation, guess what? They'll just change the rule. And
yes,
that's why you can't never get anything done, because they keep changing the rules.
Yes,
that's the problem.
Every time we reach the goal, they move the goalpost.
Oh my God. You know, this is just, I can't even believe that. Now listen, I want everybody to listen to this. He was elected by a certain district. Everybody knows what the city council is. That district elects you. They don't want him there. So instead of, they put a petition together and they passed a law that when they recall a vote, other people outside that district can vote now. They're not even a member of the district. Right. And then they have the power to vote him out.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
that's
ma'am.
what I'm talking about. That's why I say it's a setup.
Yes, ma'am. This is voter suppression 2020. Yeah. By all means, this is voter suppression. Texas ranks 5th in the nation, 5th worst state in the nation, 46th state when it comes to voter rights and voter suppression. So, this is what voter suppression looks like. They're no longer having a poll tax. They're no longer making you guess the number of jelly beans. Now they're saying, okay, elect who you want to elect, and we will use our collective majority to remove who you elect. And so this is what voter suppression looks like in 2020. It's sneaky, it's conniving, and ultimately it is unconstitutional. So we hope that the judge on March 30th, when we start trial, can see that and rule in our favor. But by no means, this does not just affect people in McKinney. Everyone should be outraged at this.
Now, as far as how are you able to do this? Like, now you have to hire an attorney to defend you in this. Is it the attorney? Is it going to be pro bono? I mean, this can end up being an expensive process.
Yes, ma'am.
For you.
That's what that's what they bank on. They mm-hmm. bank on the fact that they have the taxpayers' dollars, mm-hmm. have a $500 million budget, Sorry, Alexa, quit talking. A $500 million budget, and they're counting on the fact that I'm going to run out of money, or that I can't afford a representation, or that I could even find a lawyer to take the case in the first place. And thank God, the firm of Cheyenne Elahi and Associates have picked up the case and are willing to help me through it. We will have a GoFundMe at some point for legal defense. And I reached out to the ACLU. I reached out to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. I reached out to all these organizations that you would think, this falls right under their purview. But at the end of the day, when you start standing up against systems, you find out that it can be lonely at times.
And the NAACP, all those organizations that are supposed to affect us, you have to see where their dollars come from. Right. So, I mean, it's not really Black dollars that's supporting them. They also have to make their donors or their board members happy too, which is unfortunately just the truth.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So let me ask you this. So in March, you go to trial, March 30th?
Yes, ma'am.
March 30th, you go to trial? Okay, so right now, like, what do we need to do to help you? Like, what do you need us to help you do? What can we do? Do we need to write letters? What do we need to do?
Yes, ma'am. We need to write letters. We need to use our platforms to continue to expose and also spread the word. Um, we need we need volunteers to come knock doors as we continue and start the campaign, because the lawsuit is just one aspect. If we lose in court, then the next thing is for us to do a citywide campaign and try to get more people to vote no than yes in May. And
Mhm.
so we're going to need a lot of volunteers. We'll need donations, but we need people to get engaged. I think one of the things that I've learned is that we show up in record numbers to vote for the president.
Mhm.
But as you can see, when you get to the Senate and the Congress and the House, and you see that it is those senators um, that really affect and have the power. And most of us don't come out and vote for them. That's why they're able to sit in 30, 40 years and
Mhm.
not do anything. It is the local elected officials like me. When the president makes a law, we go vote for the president. That law has to go through Congress. It trickles down to the states, and it might affect you sometime. When your city councilman, makes a law, it affects you immediately. Immediately. I affect your life every day, and most people don't know who their local elected officials are. So that's one, just understand the process, getting engaged. The other part is we have this idea that we vote for people and then our job is done. So, a lot of my folks came out, volunteered, helped get me elected, and then they disappeared on me. So it put me in this crazy spot. They said, okay, we elected you, go get the job done. Well, when I get elected, and when you elect people, you need the community more than ever. So what I needed participation at city council meetings. I needed my community to be engaged and show up to these meetings so that they can address issues and so that I could do the work. So for instance, let me give you an example. If you come into a city council meeting and you say, I've been pulled over several times and I feel like I'm being racially profiled, or this is happening, or you come to the council meeting, you say, I'm tired of riding on these raggedy roads, it's messing up my tires, or, the parks, we need these things. Then I can sit back and take notes and look at my counterparts on the council and say, hey, we need to address these. We need to fix these. You hear the community, this is an issue. Well, when the community doesn't show up, one or two things happen. Because the community is not showing up to the council meetings, either A, nothing gets done, and I sit here for 4 years, or B, I have to bring up the issue. When I bring up the issue, then it's no longer a community issue, it's a Lashadian issue. And it's easy for my counterparts to mute me and tune me out because they're tired of me bringing up issues. The first thing they say is, well, if that's an issue in the community, Councilman Shemwell, why isn't the community here at the meeting addressing that?
Gotcha.
So either I sit here for 4 years because the community is not showing up and I'm just a seat holder, or I take it upon myself to start addressing issues that I know is an issue in our community. And now I've created enemies because they don't like the way that I address these issues.
That is great education for me
Yes,
because I just never thought about it like that. I thought that as a city council person, you go to the meeting, whether someone shows up or not, there's things to be voted on, and we want that person to vote like we would vote. So we elect a certain person.
yes,
I've never thought about going to, because, actually, I thought that the city council meeting was just a meeting where you come to vent. I really didn't feel like if you go to a city council meeting, things can actually be resolved by you attending the meeting. I never thought about it like that. Is that the way it really works?
yes, ma'am. It's the best kept secret. You got, those that show up get things done, right?
Really?
Yeah. And so, you have people showing up saying, hey, my dad was a sheriff for 20 years. Can you name a street after my father?
No.
If you get four people on the council to say so, then it can be done. But
Shut
you
the
know,
door.
being present is half of the battle, and that is the issue. And I understand that people have life, they have kids, they got school, they got work. But if we really want to see the change, then there's no excuse. You have to show up to these meetings, and I think we've become complacent and lackadaisical. And again, they put all the weight on my shoulder. And not only do they put the weight on my shoulder for having those arguments and fighting the good fight, knowing that I'm one of seven, not only do I have to fight the fight, I have to convince three of those other people to agree with me on issues that they may not even have any knowledge of, so that I can change things. But then they want me to take all of the work that I'm doing and the other council members are doing, and then disseminate that information to all 200,000 residents personally, either by phone call or email or social media, or, so, well, we don't know what you're doing. So they want me to do the work, full-time job, while working a full-time job, and then be able to come to the community and reach out to every church, reach out to every community member, and tell them the things that we did in a public meeting.
Well, they don't tell people what they're doing, because nobody knows what the city council.
Well, the thing about it is, again, I understand people can't be present, but you can access the city council meeting from your phone.
Okay.
You can access the city council meeting from your laptop.
Okay.
You can access our city council meeting on your cable. So there's really no excuse for why you don't have the information. I understand you might not be present, but you can still watch and follow along and receive the information and see the conversations that are being had on your behalf.
So, okay, what's the process? So when I watch a city council meeting, I see people go up, just like somebody in St. Louis, where I'm from originally, they posted a Ferguson city council meeting. It was all this yelling, screaming. Then the mayor walked out, or the manager, city manager. So the way I'm thinking, I'm telling you the truth, I think a lot of people think like that. You come there, you say what you have to say, then how does that go from, like, at that point, do they vote on it then? Does it come back to a vote? How does that process work as far as you come into the city council and you make a statement? How does it work after that?
So, yeah, technically when you make a statement during public comment, if the item you're discussing is not on the agenda, then technically, legally, we can't address it. Because we can only talk about the things that are on the agenda that have been posted to the public prior to the meeting. So it's like a 72-hour window where you have to post the information that will be discussed prior to discussing it. So if you come in with the topic that's not on there, then technically we can't really discuss it. So I can't give you an answer. But what I can do is talk with my counterparts and say, you know what, we need to have this on the next meeting. We need to discuss this. We need staff to look into this and bring us back some information and check into whatever matter it might be. And so that's how you start the conversation and get the ball rolling. Because if you have elected officials that are held accountable by your votes, and you say, you know what, I came to this meeting 2 weeks ago and I addressed this and you didn't call me and you didn't respond to me. Well, that makes the elected official look bad, that he's not hearing the concerns, or she's not hearing the concerns of her constituents. And so that's when you start to build that accountability. And so, showing up is half the battle. It may not be addressed right then and there, but you've sparked the conversation that can lead to the next meeting and so forth.
Okay, so let me this is education for myself. So how do you get something on the topic? Like, how do you get your topic on the board or whatever? How does that work?
So in the city of McKinney, you have to have a first and a second. So you have to have two council members that agree that they want to discuss something. And then, the mayor can approve or appoint things to be on the agenda. So,
but how do you submit it? Do you write a letter? Do you send an email? Like, how does that work?
So we the two of us can send an email to the city manager and tell our city staff that we want this on the agenda. As long as there's two of us, then we can have it on the agenda.
Okay, so not necessarily two members of the city council, just two people, the person that's presenting and you.
Two members of the city council. So again, if you had an issue and you brought it up to me and I'm your council member, then you would address that issue and concern. I, as your council members, and say, I need to make sure that my constituents are taken care of. And so I need to find somebody else that will agree with me to have this on the agenda.
Is that have you found that hard to do?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Depends on what the issue is. And
Because the reason why I'm asking this, and this, I don't mean to get off topic, but I had an issue because I live in the city of Garland, and I wanted to have the power to choose. Like in Garland, you have Garland Power and Utility, and that's all you have, and that's owned and operated by the city. And when I reached out to my city council person about that, I said, well, I don't want that. I wanted to take it to a vote and see if we can have the right to choose whatever electric company we want. And his response was, that particular company is owned by the city of Garland and it has a debt, and basically saying that's just the way it's gonna be. That was it. It was no, I'm gonna take it to the council or whatever. So I kind of did feel like, he didn't respond to me, you know what I'm saying, in his district. So after that, I really didn't know what else to do,
Yes.
So,
some of those things, like the city of McKinney runs its water services through the city. So, there's not a choice for who else can run that water. So some of those things, are, but however, your city charter dictates what the rules of your city are. And so I would tell all people to look up the city charter in which you live. This gives you all of your rights and all of your rules. This is where the recalls are so that you can recall council members, because the community has the right to do certain things. So if you want to have something voted on that the council members aren't voting for, the community can put together a petition of a certain amount of numbers to have that actually voted on. So you guys can supersede the council by, a certain amount of petition, depending on what your charter states. So every city charter is different. So that's where your power is.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I consider myself, pretty good at researching stuff, but I know a lot of people, they just don't know where to begin. And I think this is an excellent discussion because I want to help you. Like, I want to help you get, I would ask you this. If, let's say they recall the vote, right? Recall your election and they vote you out. Can't you run again in 21?
Yes, ma'am. But, I think the bigger issue is that, they've set it up and, these are their contingency plans for power. First of all, power never concedes easily. And so they have contingency plans, like a recall election or these things to be able to try their best to control and maintain that power. So if they recall me in May, I could run again starting in January for the next election in May. But for that year, they have the ability to appoint somebody to my seat. Somebody who did not campaign, somebody who did not have to make the sacrifices I made, somebody that may not be for the people, somebody that the people. So this is, typically when you have a recall election, then they would have a special election, right? And so then I could run again in the special election. But they're trying to bypass all of that. They do not want to give, because they know if they have a special election, which then again, my district could be the only district that votes, that I would win time and time again. Right. So they don't want to do that. So they want to appoint somebody to my seat for a year. This kind of gives that person the advantage. They become the incumbent of the seat. And then I would try to have to outrun them. And, it's just a whole mess. I think, again, it's, I don't think they could beat me in an election of my district. It's just the point that they are really trying to dominate illegally, in my view, the election and take it out of the hands of the community.
I want to continue to talk to you. I want you to keep us updated on what's going on, because I want to actually, when it comes down time to you start your, if it goes to the fact that if you're unsuccessful in court and you have to run, I want to help you. Like, I know I'm busy, I got a lot going on, but I can hand out flyers. I can wear a t-shirt. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, what do you do, calls or whatever, I'm willing to help you do that, because we need people like you. You know what I'm saying? We have too many people that look like us that's in office that's not. To me, personally, the issue you fighting for, as far as the police department and how we've been treated, it's like the number one issue for Black America. I don't even know how people can stand on TV and say they're running for president, and for the Democratic Party, and they don't mention that.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
mean, that's insulting to me.
Yes,
Because you see, every time you see on TV, people being affected by the police department, and you just ignore it and start talking about climate control.
yes, ma'am.
I'm offended. So for you to stand up like that I mean, they are powerful. You know, you already know they just pull you over. Do you feel like you're being watched, or do you feel safe?
Think, you know, historically, we know that all of our Black leaders, most of them that stand up for us, either are assassinated or their character is assassinated, right? So they're discredited, they're demeaned, they're targeted. Um, you know, I want to say first and foremost that, you know, McKinney is a great place to live. It's one of the safest places in Texas. It is the safest place in Texas in 2019 of its size. And we just, you know, we have a great community. That doesn't mean that we don't have room for improvement. It doesn't mean that we can't continue to strive to be better. So I don't want by any means to people to think that, you know, I'm bashing McKinney. Yo, we have issues. We're a great city, but we're having growing pains and we have issues. And if we can't talk about these things, if we can't agree to disagree in a diplomatic way, then how do we expect our 200,000 residents to handle their disagreements and disputes? We have to be the example of how, you know, how we treat one another in our community. And we have to be a better example of how to govern. And so I'm hoping that my counterparts can come around and see it, you know. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to stop fighting, whether that's as an activist or as a council member. And some person came to the council and said the other night, well, that's a state of emergency and this is a city. If you want a state of emergency, well, maybe you should run for state. Well, maybe I will run for state representative, and maybe I will run for U.S. Congress.
Oh my
So, you know,
God.
the sky is the limit for us. And I'm excited. I just thank you for taking the time to be engaged and willing to learn and accept that we're all learning. You know, I don't know everything. You don't know everything, but the fact that you're willing to say, you know what, you know, let's learn together. Teach me more. That means a lot. It definitely does.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, and I'm gonna give you, text you my phone number. And
Okay.
when I say I'm serious, I'm serious. I want to help, you know, whatever I can do, as far as to assist you. I've done a couple of campaigns for judges when we were trying to get a lot of judges, because I'm actually in Dallas County. I don't live in Collin County.
Yes,
But I do want to help you because I feel like you said, this is not at all against the city of McKinney. This is what's happened to you by your own fellow members of the city council for whatever reason.
Yes,
You know?
ma'am.
And so the city, the citizens of McKinney have already elected you. They've already done their job. So all you're trying to do is continue to do your job and work for them. That's all you're trying to do. And we want to support you in doing that. That's
Yes,
it.
ma'am. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate all you do. And I tell people all the time, you know, whether you're in Dallas County, Collin County, Denton County, these imaginary county lines don't stop the real issues that we all face, the real fears that we feel. So it doesn't stop me from coming to Dallas and speaking on issues, and it shouldn't stop you from coming to McKinney speaking on issues, because this can set precedent across the country. People will be looking at Lashadion versus the city of McKinney and what the judge decides in elections in Ohio, in Hawaii. This will set federal precedent. And so people need to pay attention and stay engaged.
I'm gonna try to send this video. Have you ever watched Hidden Colors? Do you know about that?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's my stuff.
Okay, so I want to send. Have you tried sending your information to Tariq or?
You know, I find it hard to get in touch with a lot of these big names and faces. You know, you would think that these are the issues that they would be on there, but you know, everything is political these days. So
Okay.
you know, everything is about money and dollars and maybe not about what's actually going on. But
I'm gonna try.
If you have any contacts, yes, ma'am.
I'm trying. Boyce Watkins. I'm gonna try Tariq. I'm gonna push it to get you out there, because this to me is could go viral. This situation. Yes, I've never heard. I personally have never heard a situation like this before. Now there might be a lot of situations like that, but me personally, I've never heard of it.
Like I said, most most people are forced to back down because we don't have the resources. We
Mm-hmm.
need to do a better job with our collective resources and staying and sticking with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Far too often we think of it as, you know, your problem or he's going through this, but this is an us problem. This is a human rights, voter rights issue, and so I look forward to it. I know we
I know we're over. We're all way over.
we can go on and on. So I don't know how you post your videos or what's what, but you know,
I'm sure.
I don't have a problem discussing the issue, and it doesn't matter if it takes time. Hey, beautiful. Well, I did the same thing. I commandeered my son's bedroom. I told him, "Hey, you don't come in here. I need a quiet space." And
Right. She couldn't wait.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not nice talking with you. I want to thank you again for your time today, and we're gonna be in touch.
Yes,
Okay?
ma'am. Please. I look forward to it. Thank you so much, Ms.
Right.
Have
Thank
a
you.
good
Have a
one.
good night.
You
All
too.
right, bye-bye.